I'm the local history librarian at the Dover Public Library. And we do these tours in conjunction with the Reeves home, the Reeves Museum. We have some ghosts here in the graveyard that we're going to meet today. Unfortunately, sometimes ghosts get sick too, so we are missing a couple that we thought would be wandering around the cemetery, but they weren't able to make it. But we do have a few here for you. Whenever I do cemetery tours, I don't necessarily pick the most famous people in the cemetery. My method is sort of to walk around, take pictures of graves, go back to the historical room in the library and do a bunch of research and decide who sounds interesting to me. So that's sort of how I do the tours. I will not talk about Jeremiah Reeves, even though he has the biggest mausoleum here in the cemetery. So we're going to start over here with Lewis P. Geckler, the first burial in Maple Grove Cemetery. So we started out with the very first one. Maple Grove is a 40-acre cemetery that was laid out in 1886. That's the year that Lewis died. In this cemetery, if you have ever been to the 4th Street Cemetery in Dover, that's just this flat city lot cemetery. Maple Grove represents the change in the Victorian era to a more park-like setting for cemeteries. Kind of the idea going from just a burial ground to a more serene resting place for your loved ones. So Lewis was born in 1858, died in 1886. He was raised on a farm in Fairfield Township. In May of 1882, he married Iowa Baird. Can anyone guess what state she was born in? Iowa. And they had 3 children. He and Clarence Kreider ran the grocery business of Kreider and Geckler, and he also taught school for 2 years in Tuscarawas County. Now, legend has it that when he and his wife passed the cemetery as it was being laid out, they wondered who the first person was who would be buried here. Whether or not we can confirm that story, but that is the legend. The new stone was placed on his grave in 1955, and they put the commemoration of being the first burial in the cemetery. I found 2 conflicting reports on how Lewis died. One said that there was an accident in his store involving a vinegar barrel, and then another one said he died after an attack of bleeding of the lungs. And his father was also named Lewis Geckler, and he was the first directory of the infirmary, or the county home, here in Tuscarawas County. And then also buried here is their daughter Edna, who died at age 18 years old of tuberculosis. Their other son isn't buried here, but their son Walter is in the soldiers section of the cemetery that's there in the front where you probably came in. So this is the first burial here in the cemetery, Lewis Geckler. So we're going to head up this way now. And if you want to go on the road because it's flatter, you can, or we can cut across country either way. Just be careful walking through the cemetery, they're bumpy.
Hello everyone, my name is Simon Hellwig. My wife and I, Susan, were married in 1969. Right here in Dover, we lived a pretty normal life. We had 4 kids, 3 sons and a daughter. I was a shoemaker and I died in 1906. All pretty normal. Let me tell you about my life before all this normalcy. I was born in 1841, Joseph Hellwig and Susan Pershing Hellwig. I had 2 brothers, Benjamin and George. Our dad died when we were little kids in 1845. Our mom married Eli Walker a year later, so me and my brothers found ourselves living with relatives. Ben and George went and lived with Grandpa Hellwig, and I lived with Uncle Christian Pershing. In 1861, a little war broke out here in America. You may have heard of it. Ben and I enlisted as soldiers. We went down to the fairgrounds, right down the road from here. It's called Camp Meigs in the Ohio Volunteer 51st and 80th were recruited there. We left the fairgrounds in November, and we found ourselves in Nashville, Tennessee on provost duty. We saw action, and we lost some good men at Stones River. And then, in 1863, we were involved at Chickamauga, and that's where things got interesting for me and my brother and my friend Dan and our colonel, along with some others. We were all captured as prisoners of war on September 20th. We marched to Danville and packed on railroad cars like sardines. Took our knapsacks, our blankets, and our canteens. This was not going to be fun. We had to empty our pockets, and we were packed again into another railroad car and headed to Pemberton Prison in Richmond, Virginia. The guards promised us that they would give us our money back, and they kept a ledger. This wasn't true. The scoundrels regarded us for liars. Then we made our way from Pemberton Prison and we thought, well, here we could find ourselves in the clear. We might be able to get free. We came up with a plan of escape. All the prisoners decided we would mass together and get out, but so the guards read us newspaper articles ruining the plans for escape. So instead, they let us out and put us on trains, and we were thinking this was it. We were finally heading home. We would be exchanged. But the guards tricked us again, and the trains headed south. We weren't thinking much of it. What could be worse than the prisons we had already endured? Boy, were we wrong. Andersonville. That's what could be worse. Captain Wirz was a demon, and the horrors that presented themselves to our eyes were impossible to really describe, but I guess I'll try. 25 acres of open land. No tents, no blankets. Scorching Georgia sun. Rain in buckets. Whatever the heavens would dump on us. Unprotected. They gave us buckets of soup to eat. The soup was made of some cabbage, maybe a potato, but mostly bugs floating on top. We had to share it between 8 of us. Eventually, we were told that the Union soldiers were coming. We would be let free. We could walk out of here. At that point, I couldn't walk. Well, my brother Ben could, but neither could Dan. So Ben helped me and Dan to a shaded area and said he'd be back if he could. My friend Dan died there. But my will to survive was strong, and I stole a Bible from another dead body, and I traded it for a yen, and it helped. Eventually, they came and said we were going to be given a prisoner exchange, and I had to go to Savannah, Georgia. Savannah, I went to New York and Baltimore. In Baltimore, they put me in the hospital, and there I got the furlough, go home and be discharged from the Army. But to do that, I had to travel all the way to Huntsville, Alabama, and that didn't happen until 1865. So you see, I wanted a little normalcy after all that.
Okay, thank you, Simon, for sharing your story.
I'm not sure if you look like a healthy group of people or not out here. Are you all out for your morning constitutionals? Breathing in the good fresh air? Mm-hmm. Good. Did you all have your breakfast this morning?
Yeah.
What did you have?
Toast and grains.
Oh, toast. Wonderful. Very good, very good. What did you have?
I had yogurt and grapes.
Yogurt and... Good, good. You, what did you have?
Fruit.
Fruit? Oh, wonderful. Very good to hear. Now, have you all been practicing your good breathing? Now, let me see. Show me. Good, good. Remember, breathe in and use your abdomen. Breathe in the good fresh air. Good abdominal breathing. Keep practicing, keep practicing. Are you constipated? Trouble with the movements. Eating too much meat, I think. You've got to eat the good grains that God gave you. No meat. You've been visiting my brother, Curtis, too much, the meat cutter. No, do not eat the animals. Eat the grains. Much better for the movements. Your bowels will thank you if you stick to the grains and the vegetables. No meat. What you all should be eating is Clar's Good Health Bread by me, Albert B. Clark. You can get it at the Van Orr Bakery, the local dealer since 1922. You can also eat the breakfast foods. Have any of you had Kellogg? Mm-hmm. They're the big guys with good grain and health from the sanitarium in Battle Creek, Michigan. But you can get the good stuff down here too. With me, Albert B. Clark, your local health food instructor. I am glad to see all of you out walking about. I've been growing concerned for the health of everyone recently, as we're all being starved. Now, I know that we do eat. However, what's being done to the food is not right. We live in an age of prosperity and an age of chasing the almighty dollar, yet we are not chasing a healthy living. When health fails, we do not seek to correct the problem. We merely seek out druggists and physicians. You should all be listening to me, as I've put years of study and experimentation into human health. A farmer knows how to have a healthy flock, yet we do not know how to have healthy people, how to have healthy humans. We have the answer, and we have it in abundance, yet we do not process it correctly. Wheat is the answer, but not the way that it is processed to remove everything that is good from it. You need to be using Clar's Good Health flour when you bake your bread, or make your pancakes, or your muffins. Clar's Good Health flour has all of the nutrients still for strong bones, strong muscles, strong nerves, strong teeth, and strong brains. Why, a mother's milk will be better for her babies, and her babies will no longer need cows as mothers. My wife, Ida, and I, we opened a grocery store on the corner of 4th Street and Worcester Avenue when we got married in 1894. We lived in a small apartment above the grocery. But the more research I did, the more I decided that healthy living and teaching a healthy living was the way to go. So we sold out our stock of groceries and invested into the health foods. I do teach healthy living as well. I spoke to the Canton merchants at the Businessmen's Association, and do you know what they all did? They all left the meeting practicing their good abdominal breathing. Now, know this as you all go on about your day. Remember, no meat. Stick to the grains and breathe. Practice your good abdominal breathing. Breathe in. Fill the cavity. And breathe out. No meat. And remember, Clar's Good Health Bread. Thank you.
This is the grave of Charles F. Baker, and the Baker family was some very early settlers of Tuscarawas County. His grandfather, Philip Baker Sr., came here in 1815, and he settled in Blicktown, which Blicktown was the west end of New Philadelphia. The original bridge over the Tuscarawas River there was a covered bridge known as the Blicktown Bridge. So he settled in that west end. He built the first dam on the Tuscarawas River and built a grist mill there. And he was said to have accumulated a large fortune as a man of enterprise and great industry. His son, Philip Baker Jr., began his working career in the foundry business, helping to bring both the blast furnace and the rolling mill to Dover. And with hard work and industry, he started the first bank in town, P. Baker and Sons, in 1867. It eventually became known as the Exchange National Bank. The 1887 Business Directory of Tuscarawas County describes the firm as a regular banking business transacting in the purchase of bonds and loans, deposits, collections, and exchange with correspondents in the principal cities of the Union. Philip was married to Harriet Elliott, who was the niece of Commodore Jesse Duncan Elliott, who was in the United States Navy and was with Commodore Perry in the Battle of Lake Erie during the War of 1812. Philip had two sons, Jesse and Charles, and they were both involved in the bank also. Jesse's grave is just over that way a little bit, and he was described as having sound principles, sterling integrity, and superior executive ability. He studied at Oberlin and worked his way through the ranks of the bank, starting as a clerk, then the bookkeeper, and then the cashier. While a prominent member of the bank, he also held a lot of other positions in town, which is kind of a trend that you see with a lot of the businessmen. They were on the board of directors of everything. So Jesse also served as the secretary and treasurer of the Dover Boiler Works. He was a board member and treasurer of the Dover Board of Trade, the Dover Building and Loan Company, and the Dover Land and Improvement Company. He was also treasurer of the Tuscarawas County Agricultural Society, and he died in 1914. So Charles here was in the banking business for over 60 years, and at the time of his death in 1938 was the longest running banker in Tuscarawas County at that time. He also served on the board of directors of the Reeves Manufacturing Company, was a partner in the Dover Forge and Iron Company with A.J. Krantz. He enjoyed harness racing and had a stable of horses, and he also enjoyed hunting and had a kennel of prized hunting dogs. Their father, Philip, also had two daughters, and they have connections to other prominent Dover families. Mary was the wife of Alonzo Hardesty, whose family operated the City and Cascade Mills, known as Hardesty Brothers Milling Company, and she's buried in the Hardesty Mausoleum. I think that's the one down that way. There's a lot of them dotting the landscape here. In the book, The Reminiscences of Dover, the Hardesty Mills are described in 1879, and it says, the three mills run 12 burrs, have a capacity of 400 barrels of flour every 24 hours. In the previous 6 months from this 1879 report, they had purchased 241,000 bushels of wheat and produced over 47,000 barrels of flour. And their signature brand at that time was known as the New Process Flour. I don't know if A.B. Clark would approve of it or not. They were planning to buy a new coreless engine at that time with 180 horsepower and would cost over $3,000. But the coreless engine had been made popular at the 1876 Centennial Exhibition that was held in Philadelphia. The other daughter was Loretta de Grief, and her daughter married into the Dice family, which I think Dice Hill, you'll all recognize the Dice name. The Dices operated many businesses in Dover, including a wholesale grocery business and a furniture factory. So this is the Baker family, mainly bankers in town. So next we're going to go over this way. This is the Croxton family grave. And originally we were supposed to have Alex Croxton Hopkins join us here today, but she has brothers in Philadelphia buried there and another one buried in Cleveland. So I'm thinking she must have decided to visit those ones today instead of here in Maple Grove. John and Susan Croxton, headstones are back here. They are the parents of the Croxton family. They were married in March of 1831 in Ohio. John was a native of Brooke County, Virginia, and Susan was from Vermont. Now, John's descendants came to the United States with William Penn, and Susan's descendants were Puritans who landed on Plymouth Rock. So it was a family who had been here in the United States for quite some time. Susan came to the wilds of Ohio on a stagecoach to take charge of a school as a school teacher, and John convinced her to give up her school marm life and marry him. They lived in Carroll County for quite a time, and then in the 1860s they moved here to Dover, and in 1867 John was elected mayor of Dover. Their oldest child, William, had a good academic career, attended the Madison Center Academy in Ohio and then the Hagerstown Academy in Maryland. He taught school in Tuscarawas County, and then he studied law and was admitted to the bar. During the Civil War, he was a clerk in the pension office in Washington, D.C., and before the war ended, he returned and came to Tuscarawas County as a bookkeeper for the Tuscarawas Coal and Iron Company, which was the blast furnace here in town. Following the war, he went into the mercantile business with his brother Benjamin, and eventually he retired to his farm in York Township. Their oldest daughter, Henrietta, was the wife of Tuscarawas County Judge J.H. Barnhill, who in the 1860s also helped start the Dover Boiler Works. And then there's three middle sons. All of them served in some capacity during the Civil War. John served as a commissary sergeant in the 51st Ohio Volunteer Infantry, and after the war he went to Cincinnati and then to Philadelphia and became a wealthy shoe manufacturer there. He died while on a business trip to Cuba and had to be shipped back to the States, and he was known as one of the wealthiest men in Philadelphia at the time of his death, and he's buried there in Philadelphia. Son Samuel was born in 1845 and also was a school teacher for a while. During the Civil War, During the Civil War, he first served at the Internal Revenue Office in New Philly with his brother-in-law, Judge Barnhill. And then in 1864, he accepted a clerkship in the Quartermaster Department, 1st Division, 4th Army Corps of the Army of the Virginia with the 51st Ohio Volunteer Infantry. He was discharged in November 1865 in Texas. And for the next 13 years, he worked at the Tuscarawas Coal and Iron Company, starting as a bookkeeper. Then in 1878, he became a stockholder and part owner. In 1881, he became the general manager and was the manager of the blast furnace when it was rebuilt in 1879. Around 1896, he and a few others in the organization reorganized it into the Penn Iron and Coal Company. There was an article that said he was the man of pig iron in this area. He disposed of his interests in Dover and went to Cleveland and worked in the blast furnaces there. And when he died, his son David became the head of those enterprises. He died in 1919 in Cleveland. He was married to Electa Miller, and they had 5 children. Then son Benjamin also served in the 51st Ohio. He took the more traditional route and was just served as a soldier for 4 years. After the war, he was a partner with his brother William, and they sold dry goods, groceries, Queensware, dealt in clover seed, wool, and other products. He was married to Clara Deerdorf, which you may recognize the Deerdorf name. She was a descendant of town founder Christian Deerdorf, and they had 4 children. Their daughter Belle became the wife of Samuel Reeves. So there is a Reeves connection with the Croxton family. Benjamin died in 1880 of the effects of a fall he had about a year earlier. Then the youngest in the family was Alice. Alice is buried here also. And during the Civil War, her brothers often wrote her letters to her and her mother. And the letters are very fun because instead of giving her fun war stories, her brothers write to her all the time about her manners. So she told her brother Sam that she might go to school at Oberlin, and in a letter, he informed her that it would give her advantages in conversation, manners, and advice. He said how outlandish it is to hear a lady use phrases like you-ins and we-ins, and that he sees some very pretty young ladies until they open their mouths, which spoils all their beauty, and he didn't want Alice to end up that way. Her brother John wrote her 3 pages one time in a letter all about her manners. So here's some of what the letter said. When Henry Elson mended your shoes at Christmas as a Christmas present, did you thank him? It certainly adds very much to any person's welfare to be polite, and especially to girls. And I would feel very sorry indeed to go home at the close of the war and find a sister of mine grown almost to a young lady with rude, coarse manners. All the pleasure I have anticipated in her company would prove a failure, and I would feel like leaving home again to get rid of the mortification of her rudeness. Like, really? That's really what you're going to write home to your little sister? John's letter then went on to say, the way to cultivate good manners and a good disposition is to commence at home. Here, of all places, you should be extremely careful to be kind, pleasant, obedient, and polite. He told Alice to listen to Mother and always do as she says, and if she didn't, someday she would look back and wish she had taken her brother's advice. So either Alice took her brother's advice or she really wasn't as bad as they made her sound, because she did get married to George Hopkins. George, like the rest of them, the family worked at the blast furnace. And then Alice and George's daughter, Helen, married John Benton, which the Benton family is who we're going to hear about next. So this is the Benton family mausoleum. And for as large and impressive as it was strangely hard to find out exactly who was buried here. And as we go through the Benton family story, everyone in the family's name is Alvin and Plynn. And I get confused when I read it. So if you get confused a little bit as to who I'm talking about, it's understandable. But it's either Alvin or Plynn, and it's either the 2nd or 3rd generation. It's just confusing. But that's the disclaimer before the Benton family one. They came to Tuscarawas County from South Hadley, Massachusetts, and the original brothers, Plynn and Alvin, were in the mercantile business in Port Washington. Then in 1849, they came to New Philly and established the Exchange Bank there. The original Plynn died in 1858, and then Alvin continued the bank until 1865 in New Philly when he sold it to Albert Bates. Alvin was also a partner in another bank in Massillon beginning in 1849. Neither of them are buried here. So, after the sale of the bank, the elder Alvin and his 2 sons, Henry and Plynn, engaged in trade in St. Louis, and then after about 5 years there, they came back and were in business here in the area. Plynn and his son-in-law, J.M. Stout, and the father, Alvin, started the Iron Valley Bank here in Dover. It was founded in 1871. Plynn Vinton retired from the bank in 1908 when it was purchased by the First National Bank of Dover. Plynn also founded an insurance company which was run by his son John, who married Alice Crockton's daughter Helen. So there's our connection. Plynn attended the University of Michigan and was eventually the sole proprietor of the bank when his father retired and his brother moved to California. He married Ida Chapin in 1873. She died in 1923 and Plynn died in 1934, and they are both buried here. They had 2 sons and 1 daughter. The one son, James, is also buried here in the mausoleum. He died of typhoid fever while he was a student at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. He died on Valentine's Day, 1903. He entered Cornell University as a sophomore engineering student. He had spent a year at Boulder College in Colorado first. The first observed case of typhoid at Cornell came on January 26th. 8 students were struck on the first day, 10 on the second, and 11 on the third. And in a 16-day span, 14 of the Cornell students died. Half of the enrollment fled the campus and headed home. James was the 5th fatality of the students at Cornell. At the final toll, 16 residents of Ithaca, New York, and 15 Cornell students all passed away from the typhoid outbreak. It was blamed on the water supply in the town. Flynn's daughter Clara married Ernest Wentz. They are also buried here in the mausoleum. Ernest owned the Wentz Lumber Company with his father Frederick. So altogether there are 5 people in the mausoleum. A famous relative of the Vinton family was Samuel Finley Vinton, which you may have heard of Vinton County here in Ohio. That was named after Samuel Finley Vinton. He was the brother of the 2 oldest Alvin and Clyn Vintons, who originally came to Tuscarawas County. So like them, he came to Ohio from Massachusetts and was a lawyer. He served in the U.S. Congress from 1823 to 1837, and again from 1843 to 1851. And in 1862, he was appointed by Abraham Lincoln to appraise the slaves that were emancipated in Washington, D.C., and he died in that same year. So that is the Vinton family. Plot. And if you walk around the cemetery, you'll notice a lot of them like this that have a border around the family plot, and then the family members all within that border. So Adam Schneider was born in Germany in 1835 and became a naturalized U.S. citizen in 1855. On January 12, 1866, he married Elizabeth Wolfe at Port Washington, and they had 8 children: Peter, Elizabeth, John, William, Charles, Emma, Caroline, Andrew, and Elizabeth. Elizabeth's in that list twice. Okay. Adam was only sick one time in his life, and that sickness was what killed him. In the summer of 1910, there was a typhoid outbreak here in Dover that was the worst in town history. Health officials worked hard to try to find the source of the typhoid. By June 12th, there were 13 cases in Dover. 12 of the 13 cases all had the same milkman. So the health officials went to the farm where the milk came from, the Mosier farm, discovered that he had been washing his milk tins in a cold water spring rather than using boiling water as was instructed. So samples of the water and samples of the milk were taken to Columbus for chemical analysis. By June 20th, there were 7 cases of the typhoid in Union Hospital. 2 days later, there were 30 cases of typhoid, all of them living in the northeast section of town. So they also did tests on well water in that area. Also the city water, even though that was the only part of the city where they had the typhoid. Residents were assured that the city water was not contaminated, but many residents were boiling it as a precaution. Adam was 71 years old when he died and had a severe case of typhoid that turned into pneumonia. Then when the test results came back from Columbus, they found negative results from all the things that they had tested. There really was no answer to the source of the outbreak. The cows were healthy, the milk was fine, the water on the farm was fine, the city water was fine. So they really were kind of in a quandary as to where the typhoid started. While there were no answers, there were 45 cases of typhoid in town by that point in time. Adam Schneider's wife and son now also had typhoid. So sad news was reported on July 19th that Elizabeth Schneider had also passed away from typhoid. And this story is quite tragic. She was on the way to recovery. She was at home. She was doing better. But their son Charles had a severe case and he was in the hospital. Well, he had also improved, was released from the hospital, and walked into the house and gave his mother quite a startle because she thought he was so sick. The newspaper stated Mrs. Schneider was so overjoyed at seeing him that she took a sinking spell. It was said that the fever had affected her heart. Altogether, 6 people who were afflicted with the typhoid in Dover at that time passed away from the illness. So you can see on her grave it's July 19th, and on his it is July, I guess it says 1st. So they died within 20 days of one another from typhoid.
Good day to you all. It's a fine day for a stroll, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Forgive me, I was just checking out my cousin Jabez's final resting place here. One of the Reeves brothers that came and started a lot of this whole community. And on reflection, I can see that Javis and I felt similar in the memories that we wanted to leave behind. Our stones are simple markers for the people that we loved, not like cousin Jeremiah, who built one heck of a monument right there, didn't he? And who could blame him? After he suddenly lost his son Sam, he was grief-stricken, and he wanted to build something that would be remembered and awe-inspiring for people for generations, and I believe he succeeded. Hi.
Hi.
My name is Phineas Arnold. I am cousin to Javis and Jeremiah Reeves. On my mother's side, you see, their mother Martha and my father were siblings. And coming from the old country, the Reeves brothers were trained in the ironworks industry in Wales. And when they came here, shortly after the Civil War, they first came to western Pennsylvania and settled near the ironworks industry and made it to Dover by way of Niles, Ohio in 1870s. I was the first one of our family to come to Dover. I was born in 1839 in England, and my wife and I had 3 children when we uprooted and came to the United States, first settling in Cumberland, Maryland. My trade was working in a fire brick company. First, we settled in Cumberland, Maryland, and I worked at the Mount Savage Fire Brick Company for a few years, until my cousins told me about this settlement here in Dover and the mill they were starting, and I came ahead of them and set up the Dover Fire Brick Company in preparation for the mill. I spent many years perfecting the craft of firing bricks. In fact, I believe there's a number of patents still in my name in the U.S. government office, all with regards to the industry of making bricks. You see, the fire bricks were essential for the blast furnaces to function because they were resistant to heat. So you had to have as many bricks moving through as possible. And at its height, the Dover Fire Brick Company, when it was originally on the county fairgrounds area across from the mill, when I was superintendent there, we made over 30 different kinds of bricks, and we produced sometimes over 8,000 bricks a day. That's a lot of brick making, folks. And I was proud of that. And I was proud of learning, developing, making the system better. And before everything was said and done and the Fire Brick Company was moved north towards where I believe it's called Strasburg now. When they expanded it, that was near the end of my career. But a lot of the things that I developed here in Dover were perfected and used all over this country. And I'm very proud of that. And it's because of that, I wanted to see that my children would have the best education they could possibly have. So for a while, we moved the family to Oberlin, Ohio, to take advantage of my children getting a college education. And at one point, my son Alfred, who was a very good singer, by the way, was president of the Oberlin College Glee Club. And he would bring the Glee Club here to Dover to perform at the Big Four Opera House from time to time for some of our friends and our workers here in town. Made me very proud. And in fact, you know, at the time, it wasn't always of the belief that you should educate your daughters. But I was very proud that my daughter Anna attended Harvard University and went on to become a teacher here at Dover High School, which I don't even recognize anymore. and later principal of Dover High School. She would go on to marry a newspaperman by the name of Raymond White, and they would travel all across the country having glorious adventures. Her husband passed away in the state of Washington, and my daughter Anna and her daughter are now buried in Michigan. So she is the only stone of my family that is not here in Dover. My son Alfred and my son William, who were born in England, passed away before me. One passed away from a stomach ailment, the other passed away from something we don't know. I took heart to that, and perhaps I worked him too hard. Perhaps his constitution wasn't that of a brick-making man like me. Maybe I expected too much of him, but it broke my heart. I passed away in 1906, and as you can see, my wife Miriam lived several years longer, and she sadly had to bury our other two sons before her death. Sometimes it's difficult when you remember the good times to black out the bad times. But the good times and the bad times are what times are about. We don't have to forget the bad times, but we should always remember and praise the good times. And just like cousin Jabez and Jeremiah, who left a lasting legacy in this town, I believe that the Arnold family, I believe we've contributed to that. So if you've not known about the contribution of this half of the Reeves family before today, I thank you for listening to me and hearing my story.
Oh, what a lovely day. Reminds me of a day we had in October 1914. Now that day was a crisp fall day, football season. Good friends, good fun, and then a tragedy. I am Elizabeth Swart Horn Ferdig Kilmer. I know, that's a lot of names. My first husband, Hugo, is buried here with his parents. His father, Jacob, was a very enterprising, progressive businessman in Dover, with his irons in the fire, as you say. Jacob was a very busy man. He worked at the blast furnace in Dover. He owned a building on West 3rd Street that at one time or another housed a bakery, a cafe, a saloon, a tasting room, and a hotel, and even living quarters for the family. Busy man Jacob was. He owned a share in a canal boat, and he was also part owner of the Big Four Opera House, and he always wanted to own a brewery. Unfortunately, when he started his brewery, it was a very unfortunate time to do it. 2 years after he marketed his first beer, the Rose Law was passed, and Tuscarawas County outlawed the sale of alcohol. My father-in-law, like me, was married more than once. His wives accompany him here at Maple Grove. He first married Caroline Baker. They had 3 children, and after she died, he married Eliza Sheffer Sykes. Her first husband had died as well. She is the mother to my Hugo and his 4 siblings. Her brother, Otto, is married to Jeremiah Reeves' oldest daughter, Louise. She had 1 son from her first marriage. His name was William Sykes. Jacob set up William and Hugo and 2 of my brothers-in-law in the Sykes Company, which was just a furnishing and clothing store on Factory Street. Hugo and I were married in New York in 1911, and oh, we had the most wonderful short life together, always laughing, always going to parties and picnics with friends and family, just having a good life and enjoying it. So one Saturday, we drove with our friends, the Rosenthals, the Robinsons, Hugo's sister Claire, and our friend Lissa, to Canton to go to a football game. It was the Canton Pros versus the Columbus Panhandles. After enjoying the game, we went to the Cortland Hotel in Massillon to eat. I don't remember anything about that day. The last clear memory I have is of coming down Yingling Hill out of Massillon. We were in a very large 7-passenger touring automobile. They say we hit a ditch, overturned into a culvert, and my Hugo and the Rosenthals died that night, the automobile having landed on them. Blood running into the culvert. It's probably best I don't remember. I just know I lost my fun-loving, smiling, laughing Hugo that day. They say he died instantly. My life went on. It had to. I was very young, only 27. I later married Walter Ferdig, and we had 2 children. We had a son and a daughter, Samuel and Jane. Samuel followed in his uncle Elliot Nugent's footsteps and became an actor on Broadway. Walter died in 1935, and we lost Sam in 1949. My 3rd husband was Earl Ferdig. I lived a long life and died in 1985. I'm buried in Olean, New York, and I lived to the age of 98. Even though I'm buried in Olean, New York, I come here quite often to say hello and to visit with my first love, Hugo, to laugh, hear him laugh, see him smile. We talk about the old times and the fun times that we had together. Oh, it's getting late. I must go. Thank you for stopping to visit.
All for coming today to our tour. I hope you learned something, had a little fun with some of the ghosts that we had here. And don't forget other programs that we do at the Dover Library. Thank you.
Thank you.